In some of the official documents, you can even find that China is still arguing that the Palestinians have all rights, including the rights of armed struggle, to achieve their national liberation. Regarding China's position on Palestine, it's basically evolved through four phases. The first one was in very early period, like in 1950, when the People's Republic of China was established. And in that very beginning of the period, China was basically following the example of the Soviet Union and feeling like Israel might be a left leaning state with some sort of so called progressive values. And China was actually in a very close situation to recognize Israel and establishing relationship with Israel in 1950. And we can see that in the official diplomatic document in China. 1955 is the most important period in China's changing position on Palestine happened. Is during that year, the Chinese premier, he went to the conference of Bandung, and in that situation, he was able to meet representatives from the Arab world, especially from Egypt and from Syria. And also he met Ahmed Shukri, who later would become the first chairman of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. So in that conversation, he totally changed his idea about the Palestinian issue. And since then, China becoming increasingly pro-Palestine and increasingly thinking that it's probably like better not to establish relationship with Israel. And following the Suez Canal crisis, the War of '67, like China gets into the conclusion that Israel is a colonial power, is an imperialist power in this situation. Also, this is related to the change of domestic atmosphere of China itself. Like in 1966, from 76, China had this Cultural Revolution, which made the Chinese domestic policy and foreign policy very radical, and imperialist struggle became a core part of the Chinese diplomacy. So throughout the mid 60s until 76, China was basically in all the official documents advocating for armed struggle of the Palestinians and advocating for military destruction of the Zionist state. And that was the official position of China until the early 80s. Mao Zedong died in '76, and after that, China had this shift in domestic policy and also in foreign policy as well. So China sort of abandoning the so-called revolutionary diplomacy of Mao-era and supporting leftist struggles, supporting anti-colonial struggles, like started to gradually fading out in the focus of China's diplomacy. And since the '80s, you started to see that China started to be open to possibly recognizing Israel and following two major events. One is the negotiation between the PLO and the Israelis, right? Following the Camp David and later following Oslo, China gets into the conclusion that we probably can develop parallel relationship between both the state of Palestine and with Israel. Also, another event that it's basically like the Soviet Union recognized Israel as well. So China was thinking that, oh, maybe like other people are doing that, and we probably like should consider doing the same thing. And from the '80s to basically the present, Chinese foreign policy on the Palestinian issue is basically focusing on the promotion of the so-called two-state solution. And the foreign policy become a mixture between Mao's tradition and the two-state solution argument. So if you check Chinese official documents today, you would find that some of the Maoist language are still there. For example, like China still supports the national liberation movement of Palestine. And in some of the official documents, you can even find that China is still arguing that the Palestinians have all rights, including the rights of armed struggle, to achieve their national liberation. And so those are all the relics and heritage of the Mao era. But at the same time, you would find that from '80s to the present, China's relationship with Israel gets much more closer. And the trade volume, especially the economic tie, is getting extremely close from the early 2000s until 2022. Basically, the trade volume for the last 10 years at least raised more than two times, even like close to three times of that type of close economic relations. Still, the official policy is that to promote two-state solution, and the Chinese policymakers think that somehow supporting Palestinian liberation movement is not really in contradictory of trading with Israel, which is a quite arguable position, but that's how they see the situation.